affiliated with Wells Fargo, and that's a name people know, and they have an impacted feeling when they hear it. Mm-hmm. Or you can just be a personality person and just sell, and it's going to be all about people's opinions of you, your trust, and everything that they make. And I think it's a harder sell, but I think it's a bigger sell in the end.
Well, what are some of the top 5 things, and 5 or more or less, if you like, real estate companies should do with their websites and their social media?
So, first off, I think that if a real estate company has a website, I can already tell you without visiting your site, not you, but the mm-hmm. listeners in this audience, mm-hmm. that the site is going to have the same thing. It's going to have a bunch of smiling people. The smiling people are shaking hands. It's usually kind of a rainbow. So you have the black woman agent talking to the Asian guy with the Latino guy in the background nodding. Because we're doing that. We have to make sure that everyone knows that we're diverse. And
right.
Diverse, evidently, in web design means clip art.
Right.
And smiles. And so that's one problem. 2 is you have sort of a call my main number, or maybe at the best, here's my email address. But you might want to do some other stuff to try to get them to connect with you. You should maybe possibly put together your social presence, and if you have a Facebook fan page, there's a value in having a Facebook page because 600 million people are using that platform, and like I said earlier, a lot of them are in your demographic. So, have a presence there. Have what I call an outpost.
Right.
You might consider writing a blog, and in the blog, because everyone immediately panics and says, well, what do you want me to talk about? You can talk about the places that you sell. You can talk about the location around. You can talk about goings on in that city. I've seen some amazing examples in residential in which people will talk about the events going on, and they'll talk about the street party that they just had in that neighborhood, and you really get the feel of what it's going to be like when you move in. And, of course, anything that helps a buyer see themselves in their home is going to help you. The other thing I'd want people to do, and this one's a little trickier, and it does actually take having to ask a web designer for some help, but consider making a mobile version of your site. Not necessarily a mobile app, but remember that for all the work you put into your amazing website, a good lot of people are going to be driving around in their car, pausing at a stop sign somewhere, and pulling out their mobile device to try to look up some information on your site.
Right.
And if it's super tiny and you've got to scroll all over the place to find everything, it's not useful. And this gets nerdy for a second, but let me promise that if you ask the right people, they'll get what I mean. Your web browser on your mobile phone tells your website, hey, I'm calling from a mobile phone, anything I should know. And this is the part I'm talking about. So a web designer can say, oh, serve this page instead, and this page is going to be super small, not a lot of graphics, a little bit of text, and it'll give the most important things you think that buyer's going to need. And that's the trick.
Wow. Well, those are some great suggestions. Let's dive into our bullets on the flyer. And for those of you who are receiving the flyer, just follow along. This call is being recorded, so you don't have to worry about taking notes. You'll be able to check it out at facebook.com/powerisnow. So how does the web see your business, and how can you fix that? And you've been sharing some things already about that.
Yeah, so one of the things that the web does that you might not be thinking about is it's looking at all the text on your page. And if you've written from the perspective of your business versus what somebody's searching for, then you might have really done a bad number to yourself because you've told Google, the number one search engine, nothing that any buyer would have put in. So first off, you might really consider what kinds of phrases and terms you're using on your primary web page. Because, for example, if you're looking for, quality mortgages or something like that, then if it doesn't say quality mortgages somewhere on your site, you just really haven't helped anyone find you. And so that's one. Another thing that, with regards to people searching, is that for some reason in the early 2000s, every web designer wanted to sell people Flash. And Flash is, the stuff that makes your site wiggle and, move around and look shiny and sparkle and things like that.
Right.
And Google can't see anything inside of Flash. It's invisible. And so you're not helping anybody. You might start exploring video, by the way. This is another thing that's going to help you out. And the reason is YouTube is the number 2 search engine in the world. And people don't think of YouTube as a search engine. They think of it as a place to watch skateboarding dogs. But there's
right.
tons of house walkthroughs. There's tons of things that people might want to know. And how would you label those things? Of course, you'd label them the way that someone else might be searching for them. So you might put finest homes in Tuscaloosa, and so that people start looking for things about that. You might be a commercial person. You might want to show walkthroughs of your really new, awesome building that you're building for an office park. Or you might talk and do interviews with people in the mortgage space who are talking about things they needed to prepare to do their mortgage. I mean, there's things that people are searching on that you can help, and I think that thinking about YouTube is another way to help. One last one, you want to help people a little bit more by changing the way you're doing your email marketing. If you're just bashing them over the head with sales requests and sales opportunities, instead of giving them information that's useful to them in and around the main product you're selling, you're missing a great opportunity. Similar to what I said about your mobile phone and what your website looks like, you want to make your email marketing a lot more plain text than you would imagine, because most people are having trouble viewing it, and it's just all that great design work is going to waste. So a lot of people have a lot of flashy, great-looking HTML that comes onto the phone looking like a bunch of garbage, especially if you have a BlackBerry.
Right.
And so, I don't know, I guess I'd rather a really happy would-be buyer than I would somebody thinking I have an awesome-looking banner on my site.
Mm-hmm. Now, going back to how you're emailing, a lot of real estate agents use newsletters, and you can tell that the newsletters are professionally designed, and there may be a small segment in there from the realtor in which they wrote something, but most of it is a professional article about gardening or something of that nature. What's your opinion on that? Should realtors perhaps look at other means of communicating that represents who they really are, as opposed to being, using a canned newsletter?
Eric, that's a really great question, and I think there's actually kind of two ways to look at it. And one is that most real estate professionals aren't necessarily great content creators on their own right. They're not in the content business. They're saying, look, I'm told I have to have a newsletter, and I know I've got to do something to keep it warm in between pushing people to buy things. So I've got to go find ideas somewhere. And it's not bad to have that perspective. Having a curator's perspective isn't bad. But the real thing that people are going to want, and the real value that you're going to add, is if you add something to each of these kinds of pieces. So maybe you find 5 neat garden pieces in the city. What you might start doing is adding a paragraph or so around them to explain why it's of value to you and what the person could think about and all that. People want serving suggestions more than they want recipe items. And they want a feeling that they participated in the newsletter, and at the same time they want to not have to participate too much. So there's a kind of analogy about this in cake mixing. It used to be that cake mix was 4 or 5 ingredients, and then somebody came up with the idea that you could make it with just adding water. And the minute they made it that all you had to do was add water, sales went down dramatically. When they turned it back to adding a couple of eggs and a little bit of water,
right,
it went back up again because people felt like they were making something. No lie.
Wow. Now, the other challenge for agents is that it's the perfectionism that they have about either what they write or what they might produce as a video. Are there any statistics out there or evidence that would show that a homemade video, you sitting, the backdrop is a landscape picture in your living room, and you're talking about something with real estate, and the lighting may not be that great, but it's enough to see you, and you're somewhat casual and animated, as opposed to something done very professional, high end, with utilizing all the graphic tools with video software?
Yeah, I mean, you've hit on something really important. I mean, for about $100, you can buy a flip camera from Flip Video, and it's just fine. And they're simple to work with. There's nothing to it. It's all definitely really kind of point-and-click kind of stuff nowadays. And, I mean, people prefer, one of the number one pieces of advice I can give about making video is make the audio good. The number one thing everyone does wrong is they stand 6 to 10 feet away from the person that they're trying to interview, or they're, very far away from the microphone when they're doing a walkthrough video, for example. Better audio actually covers a whole multitude of sins in bad video. Now, that said, the other things to think about are that people want your ideas more than they want amazing production.
Okay.
If you've got amazing production, but there's nothing being said, then that's all sizzle and no steak.
Right. I like that. So, operator, it's about 11:11, and let's give our audience some instructions to ask Chris some questions, and then we're going to take another, maybe hit one more bullet, Chris, and then open the lines.
Sure.
Operator?
Ladies and gentlemen, if you have a question at this time, please press star then 1 on your touchtone telephone. If your question has been answered and you wish to remove yourself from the queue, please press the pound key.
So, Chris, while we're waiting for the calls to line up here, mobility. You need a web designer to convert or enable your website to be viewed on your mobile device. What is the trend? I'm noticing all the banks now. You can go in to look at do online banking from your mobile phone. Is that an absolute must now? Are people really doing a lot of business on the phone versus in their homes or at their laptops?
We are. Not only are we doing a lot of stuff mobily, but one of the things I'll say is that most of us aren't consuming our email from our home. Most of us are sliding into our phones at times that we're usually not used for that sort of a thing. If you go out to eat with somebody, if you excuse yourself to the restroom, it's almost guaranteed that you or the person are going to whip out their phone and check and see what kinds of messages, emails, and texts have come in.
Right.
It's just part of what we do now. I've really gotten to the point where I thought I would love to sell advertisement on the floor of restaurants on the way to the restroom, because I think that's where our heads are faced. And, I think it would be an opportunity to do that. So with that in mind, so mobile applications versus mobile websites is the sort of question.
Right.
It's a little more costly to build mobile applications, and the only advantage a mobile app has than a website is that it can work while it's offline, even if it does pull some bits of itself from the online world. So that's kind of useful, except that, making a mobile website is faster, a lot more flexible, works on more phones, etc. Mm-hmm. And so given those two choices, I think that's one thing to consider. But the other is, just realize how much time, the iPad sold millions and millions and millions of units right out of the gate. And Samsung has a competitor product called the Galaxy Tab. Motorola has its new one called the Playbook. RIM has whatever they called theirs. I forget, Zoom or something like that. It's a world where laptops aren't even useful anymore. People are switching to slouch tops, these little tablets that allow you to sit on your couch and check stuff out while you're watching TV. Between that and the 3-inch device, the iPhones of the world, we need to address those people where they are, not force them back to their laptop. That's the equivalent of this experience, Eric, is like the fact that if you wanted to watch a great TV show, having to drive down to Rockefeller Center and sit in front of NBC to watch it.
Right.
You watch TV where you are. That's the point. And the people who are making TVs are trying to come up with ways to make it so you can watch it on your phone. You can watch it in the bathroom. You can watch it in the airplane. Mm-hmm. Why wouldn't you be doing that with your business efforts to sell?
Well, I guess the bottom line is that we need to utilize every means possible to meet people where they are, and in the most convenient and efficient way possible.
Absolutely.
Operator, do we have any questions?
I'm showing no questions at this time, sir.
Okay, great. So how do two-way relationships improve sales and business?
Well, I think for the first part, sometimes you might have written something that, as ad copy that just doesn't connect with the people that you're trying to reach. You might possibly have written something that someone doesn't see